And welcome back to another episode of Building the Board. My name is Quinten Krzysko. I am joined by one of our fantastic scouts, Tom Kavanaugh at Tommy K underscore NFL draft on Twitter. Did I get that right, Tom?
That is me.
All right. And we are here to talk about edge rushers today. Tom, before we get into it, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just working through these prospects. I feel pretty good where I'm at with this edge class. I feel like I've watched most of the top guys, so I can't complain.
Well, good deal. Now, before we get into the prospects for the Bears, we want to talk about the Bears' edge position currently. So, Tom, when we look at the Bears roster right now, what do we see at the edge position and how much need is there?
I would say it's like Montez Sweat and really nothing else you could consistently rely on. You like what you have in Montez Sweat. I don't think he is like a tier one type of pass rusher or edge rusher in the NFL. I think he's honestly closer to the tier two, maybe even tier three. He's more of kind of a do it all player versus being elite at necessarily anything. I still think he kind of leaves some to be desired as a pass rusher. So I think really what the Bears are need to add is maybe some top tier pass rushing ability.
Yeah, and so like when we look at it, they have Austin Booker as well, right? And that's how do you feel about Austin Booker's rookie? Like, what can you expect from him next year? Anything?
I'm not saying you can't expect nothing, like he was intriguing in the preseason. My thoughts on Austin Booker was that he's a very technical pass rusher. He has a very good feel for it. I just don't think he's maybe the NFL athlete to be a guy that's going to consistently impact the passer. I think he's going to be one of those guys that like always does well in the preseason because he's going up against preseason tackles. And then when he gets to the starters, he's maybe more of just a rotational guy. So if he's your starter, you're probably in pretty rough shape.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. My mindset with him is kind of like he was such a young, raw prospect with like not a lot of college experience. Like it's
Yeah.
a 3 year thing before you can ask, like, can this guy start? To me, it's like last year you might dabble a little. This year, if you're lucky, I think you can get him in like in the rotation pretty heavy, and he starts producing. If he takes that next step there, then it's like in year 3, then you might be able to talk about him starting. But right now, I'm like, we got to hit the brakes a little. Austin Booker that if he's starting on the edge for you, you have some concerns, is the way I see it.
100%, which we'll get into like Dennis Allen's scheme and stuff like that too. Like I don't see him as a fit at all. Like I think he's really only suitable in this defense for a rotational type of role.
Now, as you say that, that's the perfect segue into our next
Right.
question.
There you
What
go.
does an edge look like in Dennis Allen's defense?
So I mean, like you can look at like his track record historically, like his time with the Raiders, Khalil Mack and the different guys he had there. I think he had Bruce Irvin there, if I'm not mistaken. But I really look at like New Orleans and what they were trying to do. I think that's like the most modern update on Dennis Allen's defense. And I think the big takeaway when you look at all the edge rushers they consistently targeted is they are big bodied, long, run defending, pocket pushing type of edge rushers. There's not these small, quote unquote, 3-4 outside linebacker, bendy types. They are the guys that crunch the pocket, that are going to hold the edge in the run game. That's kind of what he's been looking for. If you just look at like a size perspective, and I think if you watch the film, a skill set perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I just pulled it up right here as we're going. We can just throw these names out here too, since 2015 is when Dennis Allen's I believe second stint with New Orleans started. And that's so going back to 2015. Look at the edge rushers he's drafted. You got Al Qadim Muhammad, you got Trey Hendrickson, you got Marcus Davenport, Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey. So like those guys to me all kind of fit what you just said, right? That bigger, like he likes the freaky athletes. Like Marcus Davenport was up there, and Peyton Turner was a pretty strong athlete too with that size. But what I look at, I also say he's not afraid of an experience.
Definitely not. I think he's like a traits over experience and production type. I mean, not all the way. Like I thought Marcus Davenport was pretty productive for like the college level he played at. But the rest of the guys, maybe not as much.
Yeah, and some of that might have came down to like Peyton Turner. We're drafting 28th.
Right.
Like so we're just taking shots. Or Isaiah Foskey, we took him in the second round at pick 40. It's like they were just taking a shot at a guy who we might have had a first round grade on. But I think that there is like you said, a pretty clear archetype here of what Dennis Allen wants. And Tom, I always wonder about this. Like these guys who, because Matt Eberflus kind of liked a similar edge too, right?
Yes.
Bigger, longer guy who can really set that edge and maybe play a gap and a half in the run game. How important do you think that is to his defense to be able to not commit extra resources into the box for the run?
I think that's exactly what he wants to do. I think you said that perfectly. I think that's kind of the philosophy. Like he wants to change it up a lot on the back end, but ultimately keep numbers and coverage and then being able to stop the run with your front six, honestly. I mean, yeah, your front seven, including your nickel corner, if you're, in just traditional 4-3, but he wants to be able to stop it with those six defenders. And then obviously the nickel has to be a big part of run defense. But yeah, I think that's a huge part of his philosophy.
And Tom, you should take a second here and plug your podcast because you had a really interesting discussion a few episodes ago about the Dennis Allen defense. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I brought on Cody Alexander, who does a lot of different X's and O's stuff. I mean, he has his own Substack that you guys can check out. It's called Match Quarters. And then he also is now like a vice president, or he's the president of operations for this up and coming thing called Field Vision. I brought him on. He knows everything and more you could possibly know about the X's and O's of defenses. And we talked through Dennis Allen's scheme, kind of what kind of players he looks for, what the Bears could possibly need, what kind of players the Bears will target. Yeah, I mean, it was so insightful. So again, Q, thank you for letting me plug that. But I would just recommend for any Bears fan, if they want to learn more about his defense, to definitely check that out.
And that's the Bears Blog Boys podcast, right?
Bury the lead. Yes, it is it is the Bears Blog Boys podcast.
Okay. And then so our last question here before we get into prospects for you guys. How much draft capital do you expect the Bears to spend on an edge rusher in this draft?
I would think it's one of the first 3 picks that they have in the draft. I would be very surprised if it wasn't, unless they go after one of these big fish free agents, which they possibly could. I would expect them to draft at least 1 very early, if not 2 overall.
And now you say the big fish free agents, like if they go sign a Josh Sweat or a Khalil Mack,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's enough?
I don't. I mean, you got, again, if you guys want to listen to more about my takes on Josh Sweat, definitely check out my podcast. We've talked about him at length. We don't have to go into that because we have a lot of guys to cover. But yeah, I mean, Khalil Mack would be a great stopgap option. So I think you kind of want to reload the chamber still and draft a younger guy. But I honestly think to look out for a guy like Chase Young, who was literally just in New Orleans, fits the archetype perfectly. I don't think he's a great run defender that maybe Dennis Allen would ideally want. But in terms of a body type and physical thresholds, perfect fit, right? A supersized edge rusher that has experience with Dennis Allen. Look out for a guy like him. But even if they sign any of those guys, I still don't think they have the ace pass rusher that they're gonna eventually need for being a 4-and-go type of defense.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, getting that ace pass rusher guy, this little thought just keeps popping in my head of he found Trey Hendrickson in the 3rd round.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm a little hopeful that he has some of that magic there, but I don't think it's something you can count on either. But that's just in the back of my head. It did happen.
It did happen. And maybe, the Bengals got a weird cap situation. Maybe he can go back to the real well of trying to go after, not him, but the Bears in general. You never know what other options are out there.